Okay. All right, we have 8, 9, 10, couple of participants. We'll probably wait maybe another minute or so, but everybody can see us. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I apologize. I work on different time zones. I work on so many different time zones. I keep forgetting what time it is in other places. Oh, and we have Jenny Holm Franzen as well as one of the attendees from 3AF. Hey, Jenny.
3F.
3AF, for those of you guys who don't know, is the Asian American Advertising Federation, which all of us, I believe, on this panel have been to at one point or another.
Our members?
Our members as well. Yeah, it's a great organization to be part of. Just waiting on a few more people and then we'll begin. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Laki Siap. I'm the creative director and founder of Chicago Asian Network. We are a multicultural marketing agency based in Chicago and have been around for about 10 years now. And our goal is to really unite Chicago's Asian American community. That has been our goal from the very beginning. And throughout the years, we've developed a lot of relationships with a lot of community leaders as well as media organizations. We've helped them with some media buying. We've helped the community with a lot of the community events. And our goal is to make sure that Asian Americans get represented. The reason we have this webinar today was recently, especially due to the pandemic, a lot of media organizations, especially the Asian American media organizations, have reached out to me, letting me know that they had to permanently shut down their doors due to the pandemic. And so I reached out to some colleagues of mine from these industries to see how we can help give insights and some advice and opportunities to these media organizations. So I'd like to introduce our first presenter, who is going to be giving us a presentation on the insights for the current media organizations for today. She is the Vice President of Strategic Community Alliance at Nielsen, the world's largest consumer research company. She also serves as a thought leader on US multicultural consumer insights with a focus on Asian Americans, which is actually the fastest growing consumer segment in the United States. And she also delivers the narrative behind the trends that help brands, marketers, and community leaders build strategies to win in our ever-changing diverse US market. And most recently, she received the 2018 Outstanding 50 Asian Americans in Business Awards by Asian American Business Development Center, and serves on the board of the National Asian American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship. And she holds a MS in marketing from New York University and a BA in French and Asian Studies from Vassar College. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Mariko Carpenter.
Thank you, Laki, for that nice introduction. I am going to see if I could, hold on. Okay, so thank you again for that introduction. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. And hello to everybody out there in Chicago. You know, I've known Laki for quite a bit now. And I feel like in every Asian community network, we seem to run into each other. And I will tell you that you have a really strong representative with Lucky on your side and representing you guys. So, and Lucky, thank you for inviting me here today. As Lucky said, I work at Nielsen, and for those of you who don't know Nielsen, we are, as he said, the largest consumer measurement and research company. And really, at the core of it, what we do is we measure people. We measure what people are buying. And through what channels. So, you know, whether it's manufacturers to retailers like your Walmarts, your Targets of the world, we provide the measurements of products that are being sold. And we also, on the other side, measure how people are interacting with media. So we provide media clients with what is sort of commanding the attention of consumers today, but also what will resonate with consumers tomorrow. And in my role at Nielsen, I specifically focus on Asian American consumer group. And, you know, I co-author a Asian American consumer report every year. And, you know, and I'm out there championing and going in front of a lot of these big American brands to say that, you know, we are a consumer group that, you know, that is powerful, influential, and certainly a group that all marketers and advertisers need to pay attention to. And so I wanted to share with you today just a few highlights from the report. And this way you can see what it is, how it is, the narrative that I am actually presenting to a lot of these advertisers on why they need to advertise and target us through the media that you all represent. And really, it starts with this. Why do Asian Americans matter to advertisers today, right? We've been around for quite some time, so why now? And really, the answer is we, meaning AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander, represent the future, and we represent money. Those, you know, that is these two factors are really what drives the attention of advertisers. We represent the future because we are the fastest growing ethnic group. You look at here, the trend line, the orange represents Asian American population, the dark blue represents the total population, and you see how fast we've grown compared to the total population. And on the flip side, as our population is growing, so is our consumer spend. And we all know that 70% of the US economy is based around consumer power, right? Consumer spending power. So the consumer spending power is critical to the health of the economy of this country, and certainly for companies that are looking to capture customers in the future. And, you know, one thing I will say is that we are also a community with the largest disparity in wealth, as we all know. We Asian Americans have the highest, the disparity between the highest household income, the Indians versus those in the lower end, your refugees who are Bhutanese, Burmese. It's a huge disparity, and that's something that we as a community need to be aware of and help those that are in those in areas that are struggling. In New York City, I'm actually live from New York City, and we have the highest poverty, highest percentage of AAPIs are living under poverty line. And that's the highest of all ethnic groups. So certainly when we drill down and look at specific AAPI ethnic groups, there is a huge disparity, but in aggregate, in total, is what you want to use and speak to when you're talking to advertisers who are looking to target our community. And really, what is fueling the Asian American growth? And it's really two parts, right? You have immigrants who continue to come into this country, and a lot of the immigrants are coming through what we call the H-1B visa, which is a visa that's given out to foreign nationals coming here for specific jobs. And China and India are actually not number one and number two in terms of those visa recipients. And because they're coming for specific jobs, and these are primarily tech jobs, your Intels, your Googles, your Amazons of the world are the ones who are actually issuing these visas. They earn higher income, right? And so, and that is the reason why in aggregate, it really contributes to higher household income. India and China, it has also become the main source of foreign students. We are the main source of immigrants, they're the main source of immigrants, but also foreign students. And that too is a big impact, right, in the society and towns in America, because we have all these Asian students who are studying in this country. Then on the flip side, we are starting to see a huge growth of Asian Americans who are born in the United States. 86% of AAPIs under the age of 11 are born here. And so different and from their perhaps immigrant parents or even immigrant grandparents, these are individuals who grew up in the US system, who went to school here, who understand the responsibilities and the privileges, right, that come with being a US citizen. And so with that knowledge, and they're really, really breaking barriers when it comes to representation in profession. And so with that mix and that evolving sort of mix of society, we are evolving as a community, and we are starting to see this real big rise of what we're calling the Asian American consciousness. And that is with, all of us sort of shifting from self-interest, so, to the Asian American interest, right? It's no longer sort of, I'm Korean American or a Chinese American, but we know what it means to be Asian American, and we know how it is to fight for each other and fight collectively and have a collective powerful voice. And at the same time, so while we're sort of seeing ourselves differently, the American public has really been embracing the Asian influences, right? And I wanted to just illustrate this image from the New York Times. It was the cover of New York Times T magazine, and it is an image of all Asian and Asian American fashion designers. Right, and this piece, and just the way it was all, they were all gathered in one room, in this beautiful room, and taken picture in a beautiful way, really represents the Asian American power, right? They are the change makers of the fashion industry. That is how we've been touted in the article. And this kind of unity that we're seeing here represented in this picture is what we're starting to see really across the board. And so what I wanted to do is really just give you top level sort of highlights that I think would be relevant to you and your industry in terms of when you're going out there and speaking to the advertisers, what makes Asian Americans appealing, right? Appealing as a target. So one of the big things is that, as we all know, Asian Americans are really early adopters of technology. And in the media industry, what is the things that revolutionary actually thing that's happening is the streaming wars. We are starting to see so many more content out there, and consumers have so many more choices in terms of how do they get their content. In fact, Nielsen had measured there's 646,000 unique programming that was available to consumers in 2019. So obviously there is a huge war in getting the attention of the audiences. And so Asian American, as a tech leader, a leader in technology, we are cord cutters. So we're going away from cable television. We're the ones who are really leaning into broadband and also new TV services where you can get live TV, like Sling TV, like YouTube, YouTube TV. All of these new channels are ways in which they're accessing live TV, but not in your traditional way. And for media companies, this really catches their attention, because this is the direction that the whole total US is going in. It's just that Asian Americans are sort of leading the pack. And when we look at what it is that they're actually streaming, we are really seeing that AAPIs are supporting Asian American-led programming, right? They want to see things that represent our community and our culture. Ugly Delicious, 120% more Asian Americans are tuning in to David Chang's Ugly Delicious versus the total population. Same with Joe Coy, Ronnie Chang, Ken Jeong, all of those comedians. Asians are turning into that. Patriot Act is another one. South Asians love Patriot Act as well as everybody else, right? But these streaming companies know that. They know they want to capture diverse audiences. They want to tap into us, our community, which is why they're investing a lot more than your traditional outlets to actually produce a lot of these programming that will attract diverse viewers. Because we are, technically tech savvy, and we love our social media as a community, while we're watching a lot of these TV shows, we are actually on social. We're sitting there in front of TV with our phones. And this is something that advertisers are starting to look at when they're deciding what TV shows to advertise in, what kind of content to support, because what they're looking for are audiences that really look like us, right? The ones that are going to watch the programming, but also talk about it on social media. And in the digital world, this is so important, because this kind of social engagement is what makes these programming more popular. Okay, so it actually it ranks their popularity, it increases their popularity score, because when they put popularity scores, they look to see if these TV shows are being talked about on social media, and that score is what drives the recommendations when you tune into your Netflix and it says, shows recommended for Mariko, right? Those are the shows that you're going to watch, and those are the shows that get discovered. And social media plays a really important part of that, which makes Asian American Pacific Islanders a lucrative, more desirable audience segment for a lot of these content creators. We also see, and we talk about it a lot in our report, about Asian Americans who are really deeply engaged with the news. And this is really, really important, because it shows that we care. It shows that we are a community that is not just going to sit quietly in our own house and sort of shy away from everything that's going on. And quite contrary, we're actually leaning in. We're tuning into the news. We want to know what's going on. It shows patriotism for this country, right? And we at Nielsen did quite a bit of research around COVID when it hit, and we saw that amongst Asian Americans, there was a 27% increase in consumption of news versus only 15% for non-Hispanic whites, right? So they really, really tuned in to see what was going on. Obviously, we also had these added interests because of the anti-Asian racism that was happening that came about with COVID. So that could be also the reason in the increase. And we as Asians knew perhaps more the gravity of the virus, right? Because of our connections with Asia, but nonetheless, we tuned in and we really, really tuned in to see what's going on. And again, this is important as we are entering into election months, right? Election season. This says that that Asian Americans are forming their own opinion by watching the news. And so, and as we're, we're the ones who could be sort of the deciding vote. It really is important for a lot of these advertisers to really understand the importance of AAPI, voters. And so when we go and think about live TV and how they're getting the news, they're getting the news not just on live TV, but in every way that they're actually consuming media. So there's a lot more Asian Americans who go online to get the news, and really and that is because in general we're going more online, but they're also getting the news through streaming radio, through social media, through podcasts. So this says they want the content, but they want the content in the way in which they in the channels that they're actually comfortable in. And so the report really talks about other trends within marketing. And when I go in front of these advertisers, I often hear them say, oh, Asian Americans are so diverse. They speak so many different languages. I don't even know where to begin. And this is where I really start to, when I talk to them, it's really about understanding us as consumers first, understanding the importance of heritage and family and community for us, then really layering on top of that the needs and the preferences, right, and our interests. Seafood and fresh produce are really important to us when we go into a grocery store, like all those kinds of data-driven information. Then I tell them that there's so many opportunities then when you look at in multiple channels to actually connect with our community. There's a lot of these channels that are now English, that are in English, but very niche. The Juggernaut is something that is a media outlet that really focuses on on Indian Americans. But then there's also the in language, where I think a lot of you are audiences, and for them to really think about integrating all of that into their bigger plan. And again, the emphasis, in the time of COVID, we really saw that these in language is where people are leaning into. That is, if advertisers want to be represented in a way that they're authentic, that they're in touch with the community, what best way to do that than to really partner with an in-language media company. And a lot of marketers, when they start saying, I don't know what to do with Asians, it's really not their fault, right? Because for so many years, for a long time, Asian American faces were we were part of other people's narratives, and if you look at the history of media, we were like the weirdo. If we're not the weirdo geeks, we were martial artists, right? But we were never we're always sort of the outsider, the foreigner, different people. But really in year 2000, it changed. Everything really changed. Harold and Kumar hit the movie theater, and all of a sudden you have two Asian guys who are doing the same thing as everybody else. But also, digital really opened up an opportunity for our community. It opened up an opportunity for a lot of these artists to be able to represent themselves in a platform that was very democratized, right? So Lily Singh's videos that she made on YouTube down in the basement amassed huge audiences, but she's funny. But it also gave us a very, a peek into a life of an Indian family in the States, right? And really made us closer to the American public. Aquafina, same thing, she started on YouTube. So while all of this is happening in front of the screen, we also had a lot of Asian Americans who were behind the camera, really being instrumental in creating and developing a lot of these platforms that have really become popular, mainstream in the States. And so I wanted to end by showing you this 90-second clip of where we are as a community, as an Asian American community today, and and I feel really proud when I sort of see all the accomplishments. So here we go. Hopefully this will work. Let me just see 1 second. Okay.
That's great. Thank you. If anything, if I fall upon hard times, we can sell this. So that's good.
What's up, Soul Cycle White Harlem?
Really? Yeah. Oh, we can't wait. And the Oscar goes to Parasite.
Give it up for BTS!
First, let me say, America, it's great to be back on the debate stage. Thank you.
Provide opportunities to be equal.
He is the first Korean American to be assigned to the space station and moon missions.
Look, honestly,
I never told you.
I'm hot.
Hey, hold up.
$10 for 3 pages.
I'm only two.
Yeah, I know.
Welcome to our pantry. Around with meal soup powder, baby.
Holy moly dollars.
Okay, so as you can see, I think we've come a long way from those times where we were just these martial artists in some movie. So just key takeaways, and really this is more of what it is that I say to a lot of these marketers on why it is that they really need to include us in their marketing plan and in their advertising campaigns, is that, you know, we are a group that is impacting the cultural landscape. We're actually cool, guys. And Asian Americans are pace setters when it comes to digital, right? Everybody is going into the digital space. You have to, otherwise you will be left behind. And really AAPIs are the ones who are sort of setting that pace. And, you know, there's a lot more opportunity, right, for advertisers to reach our community now, including a lot of your media companies. So thank you. And I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with Mike and Telly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mariko. And I've gotten some questions about that report. You guys can actually download that report on the Nielsen website. And for whatever reason you cannot find it, you can always shoot me an email at locky@chicagoasiannetwork.com, and I'll make sure to get that report to you guys. I'm really excited to get this panel started. So I'd like to introduce our two other panelists. First up, we have Michael Moon, who is the co-founder and general manager of Prime Image Media Group, LLC. They are the leading Asian media event and marketing representation company in Northern California. Prior to Prime Image Media Group, he was the Associate Director of Business Development at KTSF TV 26 in San Francisco and KPIX TV 5 CBS New Media Development and KYLD Wild 94.9 in field promotion and production. So his expertise spans not only in TV, but radio as well. He has helped clients from H&L Partners, Cedar Fair Amusement Parks, Pepsi, Zoom, US Trading, and AIG with creating their new sales-driven program and content, as well as events and promotions. So thank you so much for being here, Mike. And second, we have Telly Wong, who's the Senior Vice President and Chief Content Officer of IW Group. They are a leading multicultural creative agency that designs innovative campaigns and experiences, such as clients for McDonald's, Brown-Forman, and Warner Brothers Pictures. And recently, in the response to the surge in hate incidents against Asian Americans following the outbreak of COVID-19, Telly actually led the creation of the hashtag Wash the Hate campaign that invites Asian Americans to post videos of themselves washing their hands while sharing personal stories about how the pandemic has impacted their lives. Launched in March with the participation of Asian American actors, leaders, influencers, the initiative quickly went viral and has garnered global attention from numerous media outlets, including Good Morning America, People, Hollywood Reporter, and most recently, Wash the Hate campaign debuted the first national public service announcement addressing the issue of COVID-related discrimination against the Asian American community. Fresh, transformative, and culturally progressive, Telly's work has also been recognized with numerous honors, such as the leading industry organizations as Ad Age, Public Relations Society of America, and PR Daily. And in 2016, he was named as PR News's Agency Awe Professional. He's a graduate of NYU and earned his BFA in dramatic writing and a double major in East Asian studies. So Tally, thank you so much for being here as well.
Thank you.
All right, so after that presentation that Marco gave, it gave me so much pride and an honor to be Asian American. And you know, I'm sure a lot of our viewers here who have attended this see that, okay, I see that Asian Americans, I always hear this, that Asian Americans are the fastest growing minority. We have the highest household income, yet, you know, I think there's still a challenge. We're still struggling. So can you guys, anyone who wants to jump in, talk about what are the actual opportunities that you've seen for these Asian American advertisers?
I'm happy to start. I think in the last couple of years, we've seen, before COVID, obviously, but in the last couple of years, we've seen a great deal of interest ever since Crazy Rich Asians, because I think that opened up a lot of eyes for the industry in terms of seeing the community, this very diverse Asian American community will galvanize behind a film or a product. And they are reachable because there are all these new channels that Mariko had pointed out. So I think from my experience on the agency side, we got a lot of interest from various brands and companies following the release and success of that film, a lot in the entertainment and lifestyle space, particularly.
So from a media perspective, I mean, it's great that we have all the digital stuff that's coming out there and that there's all the different kind of metrics and ways to engage with OTT, with, you know, YouTube and all the other digital stuff and programmatic. But I think also, you know, coming from a traditional side, you know, because I've spent most of my life in radio, television, and print. I also did some digital and general market digital and some other things. You know, some of the challenges with digital is, you know, you're not sure who's actually necessarily watching. You do have metrics, which is great. But then at the same time, you know, you don't have localism, right? I mean, you can have an article, but it's not in the area. You know, if you have a newspaper, you have radio, you have TV, it is in the area. Like it is that area and you know it's safe. You have really strong community relationships. So from a media side, I think the opportunity really isn't necessarily just like, you know, a particular category or any of the other stuff. It's really that, you know, advertisers are really interested in the Asian market, but we need to have standardizations and metrics. And they understand that there is a need or that there is something with your traditional, like there is something with over the air and print and newspaper, because local advertisers see it. Local advertisers spend a lot of money in those mediums. It's just, we're not to that point where we are matching what they're seeing on digital. We're not able to create that PowerPoint. And I think the standardization tools right now are so cheap and it's so easy. And there's so many different ways that even as a media person, you could be using digital to promote yourselves, right? Promote your own TV station, your own radio station, your own, you know, YouTube, your own newspaper, radio station, through digital. Like bring those people in, let them know what you guys are doing. And that way you also get an understanding as to what the agencies are coming up against, right? And I think, you know, we in terms of the media side, really have to think about like, what can we do to make it easier for agencies, for advertisers to get involved with our product? So I don't see the opportunity as more of the tools, the standardization versus here's a category, because I think there's a lot of people that the category will come, but if we aren't set up correctly with like example, like Nielsen, like utilizing Nielsen. Like there's a few stations in the Bay Area that utilize Nielsen, right? So now there's an actual marketplace. There's 3AF. 3AF has a ton of different contents and resources. Be at the table at 3AF. Join 3AF. Join an organization, right? There's all these things. Like me personally, for my business, I spend a ton of money on my own research, right? I subscribe to the Nielsen, not Nielsen, I subscribe to the 3AF reports. I have different data sets that I subscribe to, right? But you need that stuff in order to help grow the marketplace.
Thank you, Mike.
The only thing I would add from a different angle is really I think there is an opportunity now to really go out to your clients or your prospects to say, this is the moment for them to be authentic, right? To get in with a community. And there's no better way to do that than to go local and to go in language, right? Because marketers today are thirsty, and they have to change the way they've been doing things with all that's happening around us. That this is the moment where they're going to be interested in finding new ways and authentically connecting and getting the buy-in of a new consumer segment like ours.
Thank you, Mariko. Mike, you mentioned something very interesting is utilizing these tools, right? Getting the data from something like Nielsen or the Asian American Advertising Federation. Are there any other tools you think that a lot of these small minority media organizations out there can be using? You mentioned a lot of them are at low cost.
Yeah, so I use Social Explorer, which is a census data mapping service. It's really inexpensive for what you get out of it. It pulls all the different data points from census. It can pull census block, it can do all this stuff. It can aggregate all of that data. I can find out by language and all that. And I can create pivot tables based on that. It's relatively inexpensive. There's Claritas, which is, they have their own sort of data set. They use stuff from Nielsen. It's a little bit more expensive. Well, actually, it's a lot more expensive, but it's really, really, there's a lot of things you can do with it in terms of creating, buying rings and all a variety of other things. That one I only have for San Francisco. But, there's, I forgot I'm not muted anymore. I thought I was muted. Sorry. Yeah. So there's those, and it's a standardized data set. And the thing is that, especially now with census, like we need to be able to get as many people engaged with census, right? And that is extremely important. Without that data, none of this other stuff works, right? Even with Nielsen needs census data, right? They need to be able to justify them putting money into the Asian market. They need to justify that there is a data set, that there's people out there that are Asian, and it has to come from census, and it has to show the true number, right? At the same time, with census, with Nielsen, they have panels, they have other people that are reaching out to gather this data, right? And we also need, as a community, need to say, look, we need to be a part of different platforms, right? We need to be a part of census to get that data. We need to be able to get the mapping systems, all that stuff. We also need a part of Nielsen in the sense of like a grocery store, an Asian grocery store. You need to patch in your data set into Nielsen so that way they can get that data and put it into their system, right? If they make a phone call to you and they're like, oh, we want you to get on our little portable people meter, it's like, yes, I need to be a part of that. Why? Because it's important for the community. Because ultimately we're valued based on how much we're worth, and our worth is extremely important in the US, right? So, from that perspective, in terms of research, and those are the type of tools that I use. The other things that I think we really need to be a part of is organizations. So again, it's like 3AF. 3AF is the one, everybody should just be a part of 3AF, right? From a media perspective, because it gets us into that conversation. They've had a bunch of panels that are tied to media, so they understand. It's also for media to understand that, agencies, they do a lot of work, right? And they have to work with all these different Asian media stations that have all different kinds of platforms, right? Some are fax, some are Excel, some are this, some are that, right? There's nothing standard, right? But if we did standardize and we knew the challenges that agencies have, we as media could then better make that process easier and faster and more efficient for the agencies to go and work with us, right? So that organization, there's NAB, there's ANA, there's a bunch of other organizations that I personally belong to, but I do think that we all need to belong to just because we need to be at the table, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I think I completely agree with you when it comes to standardizing. I think that's one of the ways forward as a minority media organization, because we, every time I work with a lot of the local media organizations here, you know, I try to ask them, what's the difference between your minority media outlet versus your competitor who's very similar to you? And instead of talking about the data and the metrics, they instead say, oh no, we're just better than them. We've been around longer than them, or we have a larger distribution, instead of really talking about the whole process of the data they're able to collect in terms of what that says about their community. Telly, in your experience, since you work on the agency side and you've worked with, let's say, Warner Brothers when it came to releasing Crazy Rich Asians, as well as the Mulan live action movie, what is it that you look for when you work with a minority media outlet in terms of the data?
Yeah, that's the big question. So we're the middleman. So we're there to advocate on behalf of the media outlets. So I think to everything that Mike was saying, we need the tools to be able to present the information, the data, and everything else to present to our clients. So the client typically may not be familiar at all with some of these in-language media outlets. So we have to kind of find a way to build a case for diverting dollars into some of these media platforms. So, and I find that a lot of times the information, there's a deficit of information. So what their client responds to are some successful, measurable case studies that demonstrate success, that demonstrate that there's ROI for every dollar invested, they're going to get back 10 or 20. And sometimes that information isn't there. So it's very difficult for us to sell in this concept. And mainly that's really it. We just have to explain that the reach, the audience that the outlet taps into, and why it makes sense to utilize this media as part of the larger campaign.
Ellie, going back to, sorry, just going back to your thing, you know, it's interesting because, you know, we're the only industry that seems to be having to always justify ourselves for the past like 30 years, right? You know, when general market or other parts, they're just buying, oh yeah, I got so many impressions, oh, the campaign didn't necessarily work, but I got so many people because I got so many rating points, I got a certain percentage, right? So, you know, that part to me has always been a challenge because everything is a test market. And even the ones that have been successful, that have been doing it for a while, like Verizon, like Walmart, like all the other ones, at a certain point, they stop. Because at the certain point, then it's like, oh, we justified ourselves in the beginning, but then how do we keep that PowerPoint going? Like, how do we keep those numbers and those impressions and that stuff, right? And I think that's, you know, that's, to me, that's always been the greatest challenge, right? Is that.
And as an agency, we face the same issues where a client comes in, they're excited about the Asian market. We do work with them, and then a couple of years later, they lose their interest, or they decide that it's not a priority. So we're always constantly having to fight to keep our dollars and maintain our budgets. And I think that's where this sort of like advocacy part comes in with organizations like 3AF, with Nielsen, to make sure that we're communicating with the client and letting them know that these dollars that they're investing into this community have an impact. And sometimes maybe that requires a more larger collective voice, which I think speaks to, you know, Mike, what you were saying about just this more of an advocacy and more of a concerted effort. But I think also, one of the challenges historically, our community has been obviously not as vocal in the past. And I think that's when you're quiet, sometimes you get ignored, and sometimes they decide that you're not worth investing into, because also so there's a confluence of hurdles that we always have to deal with. And I think historically there's been a thought, I think that's changed now, but that you could reach Asian American consumers through your general market advertising. the ones that are going to buy the cars and things like that, you could just buy a billboard in Times Square and you're going to reach a segment of that. But I think with everything that Mariko shared, that there is this consciousness bubbling up and there is this identity that you can market towards. And I think Crazy Rich Asians was a great example of that, that marketers are really rethinking the way they approach these different segments, and not just ethnic segments either, but generationally and all those other things.
And I would also add too that, you know, when it comes to syndicated data, you know, it may be not cost effective for some of the smaller guys, right? But in today's marketplace, it's really important for you to actually have data of your own customers. It's, you know, and it's cheap today, right? It's cheap for you to get research. It's cheap to get research of your viewers, right? So that's always better than nothing, but to have that database, to have that connection is what you're selling to your advertisers, right? That into their house, that into, you know, a print piece that they cherish, that they take with them to read on the subway or whatever. Like that is your asset. You know, and so I think there is ways in which you can invest in that asset, and there is value to it that if you market that, you know, to your advertisers.
And going off Mariko's point, you know, local or our folks, you know, that started the radio stations and print and TV, I mean, they were their persona. The person who started that, they were the influencer of our community. That's what they were doing, and that's the reason why they did it, because they wanted to be able to have a voice in our community. So they set it up a radio station, a print ad, you know, a newspaper, or started a TV station, right? So, you know, it's doing that someone's doing now. Like, we lose sight of the fact that, you know, our stations, our voice can be personified, and you can find out who those people are that you are talking to. And that is really important when it comes to, you know, making sure that you have an audience metric. And so we've actually done a lot of stuff with some of my other clients, you know, QR codes and email database and reaching out, asking questions, you know, even for campaigns, doing a pre and post question, you know, and really showing them the behind the scenes QR code and information. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? Then it's, you go back and you kind of refigure it out and kind of do it. But ultimately, if you don't have that data, it's never going to work, right? But if you have that data, at least they know, and the agency knows, the client knows that you're trying. Like, you're really trying to make sure that they get the best and most accurate data. And honestly, so there was a client that I was talking to the other day, and she was saying, you know, direct response, if you do a direct response, I don't want the most popular show, right? I want the show that doesn't have enough many people, because they're not necessarily watching it for that show. They're just watching because they just want something to be on, and they're more apt to click or go and call to do an action based on my direct response. So that made me think, you know, it's not about just volume all the time. It's about specific programming that doesn't necessarily have to have that much people, or that, you know, but it's that person that marketer wants. And if we don't have that data, then we're just going to go back to how we've always been, like, oh, I've been here for so long, I'm the best, I'm this, whatever, but there's nothing to support it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Mike. I know we're starting to get a bunch of questions, so I'd like to open up to questions in just a bit. In the meantime, what I'd like to do is really poll the audience to see where they're at with their minority media organization, what type of minority media organization they are. And it's only going to take about less than 30 seconds. So I'm going to launch a poll real quick, and I'd love for the audience to participate in the poll, and then we're going to get to Q&A. So go ahead and begin the poll. And in the meantime, while the poll is being launched, Mariko, you brought up a good point as well, is that some of these minority media organizations may not have large budgets, right, to be able to get some of this data that they need. One thing that I've realized is now more than ever, I think it's time for a lot of these small media organizations to work together. Let's say you're a South Asian media outlet who wants to work with, who's struggling during this time. If you can find a way to work with another South Asian media outlet where you guys, share clients or customers, or even share, let's say, some of these softwares or paid database programs, right? I think that would also help not only limit your costs, but start this relationship that you guys could build, because then you can essentially be able to help each other out and cover more territory. Or if you're a South Asian media outlet based in Chicago and you know a South Asian media outlet in New York, you know, why not work together and try to see how you can collaborate to get your client's message out there, not just in the East Coast, but in the Midwest or the West Coast, especially now.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, at every level, I think partnership and being innovative with who to work with and to collaborate is a really good tactic. You know, and it could be somebody, you know, if you really want to penetrate the community, right? To maybe it's like going in with a couple of other media partners to fund, you know, or to host an event. So that they can really, you know, make a blast to the community and maybe get the advertisers out really deeply into the community as well, right? Make a bigger impact because you have more people in it. So I agree with you that partnerships and finding good allies is really good.
Yeah, we don't have to do everything ourselves, right? So there's a ton of platforms, and there's also this fear about going digital and just letting it out there. So an example is there's a client that, again, the client I have, you know, they'll run a TV. So they'll have a drama, the drama will run, and then they'll see a spike on YouTube, right? It doesn't diminish the TV. It adds more people on YouTube, but it's a different audience than it's on TV, right? So you're capturing a more diverse people, right? So one is not, you know, I think although then it's I'll flip the other side of the coin from a media perspective, it is very costly to start your own website and kind of get all the metrics and all the other stuff, right? And making sure everything goes up there. So there is that. And that's why I say partner with other people, other platforms, you know, trust that YouTube is going to, you know, may not get as much as if you do it on your own, but trust that it's a medium that you don't have to worry about, right? And that there's other ways to, grow your own. It's basically marketing for your own business. For your media.
And I think, you know, we're in a situation where there's a lot of talented, smart, young folks that are out there. So, you know, maybe you'd have an intern come in and really help you get your brand and your content. I mean, that's the other thing. You have a huge asset, which is your content, right? But what a shame that only people who are in your one channel or two channels have access to it. You want to give a broader reach, a broader access. But social is free, you know? So there really is no excuse for social media. And hire an intern to really, and give them a task to say, look, I have all these great content. Get me out there to build an audience on social media. And what could be like a daunting task for you probably is not for a young college student or a recent grad. So I would just go for it and try it.
Yeah, and I could just quickly add to that. That's also a metric that a lot of our clients ask for. So when we're recommending media partners, they want to know, in addition to circulation and clicks and all that stuff, what their social media platforms look like, how many followers that they have. So that's just something that's just kind of baked in now to considerations when it comes to selecting who gets what.
Great, all great answers. Thank you. Especially, I think that having, you know, that can be a challenge for a lot of these older minority media organizations that have been doing something and are not very tech savvy. You know, having that intern or somebody who would like to, you know, volunteer for that media organization could definitely help, you know, provide the insight, because it would be a lot easier or less complex for them, because they are used to using a lot of these programs. So I'm gonna end the poll now. We had about 59% who would participated. And now I'd like to open up the Q&A. So the first question I have here is from Jamie Arbona. I believe this is for Nielsen. for Mariko. It says Nielsen Audio creates collateral print materials in Spanish and provides Spanish speakers to assist on onboarding Hispanic members of its panels. Are there any plans to add Asian speakers or create Asian language collateral materials? There's a lot of in-language Asian radio that isn't rated by Nielsen.
Yeah, so that's always a challenge for us, is that, going after a lot of these smaller in-language niche, both when it comes to stores and media outlets. And I will tell you that a lot of these, like what Mike said before, a lot of these Asian, outlets, they don't want to participate, because they feel like they don't see the value in it, and so we are always sort of trying to increase our when it comes to recruiting. We have an external advisory council that is all Asian, an Asian advisory council. So we huddle to really help Nielsen get into these communities to get the buy-in, but it's hard, and I think it's a lot of it is cultural thing, but as Mike said before, I'll just echo what he said. It's like we all have to lean in and take action. Action when it comes to census, action when it comes to voting. When people are taking surveys, you have to say yes, because if we're not in it, then we're not represented.
Great answer. Another question is from Rosanna Huang. It says, clients are interested in revenue results for their initial purchasing investment. Can you share successful factors or suggestions?
So from a media perspective, the success part of it, the direct response, it's always a challenge because it's always, whether they're going to like the product or not. It also depends on the platform. But what we found is, we're a mass media. So whether it's print, radio, TV, it's that broad kind of it has to be very broad. It has to be the lowest common denominator. You have to make it very interesting. And then what we've done is use our social platforms and other means to hyper target and add that mix into the campaign. Ultimately, we as TV, as media, we're becoming more and more like marketers. We have to think like marketers. We have to think, what creative way can we help, this get their ROI, whatever that may be, but everybody of course wants to get more sales, but it's not, it's TV. It's not always about, sales. It's about branding. Branding works the best for TV. If there is a direct response kind of piece in it, put a QR code, right? But you can't do a 15-second ad with a QR code. Like you have to do maybe a 60, maybe 120, give up some of your inventory, right? Maybe if you need to have it put in a newspaper, put multiple, instead of one full page, put it in multiple sections with the QR code. So they see it multiple times at different times, right? Radio is all about frequency, right? So, and there's a ton of DR on radio. XM satellite radio is all about DR. They have like no commercials except DR, right? So, I think those are ways to kind of work on that.
Great answer. One of the things I also wanted to ask specifically is that I've been watching a lot of the Patriot Act, and one of the things Hassan Minhaj had said was that during this election cycle, a lot of the political candidates are going to be paying attention to the Asian American community. Normally, the Asian American community has the lowest voter turnout out of any minority group. However, we're starting to see that the Asian votes matter, especially after, we had 3 Asian Americans, I believe, on the initially running for the presidential seat. So as a minority media organization, how do we access some of those political advertising dollars? I don't know if it's open to anybody.
So for TV, it's really challenging just because, especially when you talk about candidates, because there's so many different rules. At some point, digital is going to kind of be that same way. But we have seen a change in call-ins and also just in general, there's just more interest because doing stuff digitally is a lot harder. It's not as fast, and it's a lot easier just to put something on TV. Granted, there is a lot more, there's paperwork from an FCC perspective, but all of that stuff is already baked in because they already understand how to do that. So even though sometimes it may not necessarily, yeah, so it's a little bit of a challenge. The one thing that you can look for is propositions. If you want to go look in propositions, usually there's some, state websites that carry a lot of that stuff information. There's also, join like an organization like OCA, like it's a national advocacy organization for Asian Americans. And, they have some partnerships that are about voter registration. Those folks will know exactly which propositions or which things you should look at. Join. You got to be active. You got to show up. Look, Mariko is like everywhere. I see her everywhere. She shows up, man. She's like how many webinars have I seen you on? I mean, this is my first panel with you, so I really appreciate that. But yeah, she's everywhere. And an old politician that I met in Oakland, I mean, that was his thing. It was like, just show up. You got to just show up, right? And that's half the battle. So join organizations, be a part of 3F, be a part of all the other things. Get more involved with Lucky, right? Get, just that kind of stuff, right? So.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Telly.
No, I think the second what Michael said, it's a very small community when it comes to these, when it comes to politics and the Asian Americans. And once you get involved and you make some connections with some of these organizations, you'll be able to find out who you should go to solicit those advertising dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And Telly also, their organization did a great, IW group, and what you did, Watch What They Hate. I mean, that was great.
Yeah.
And that's really what I learned from that campaign, because we kind of got looped into the community of sort of Asian American activists and political campaigns and things like that. And before that campaign, I really didn't know anybody in that world. But after we got involved, we just got connected to everyone. My team, at least. I know like some other people know other folks, but yeah, it's a small community. It's very tight knit. They're all willing to help one another. So if you get involved, you'll be able to make those connections and build those.
Yeah, and I think I completely agree. And in your local elected officials, there must be some AAPIs, right? Go and introduce yourself to those individuals, and tell them who you are. There is that Asian connection that you have to leverage. Another thing I would say is, like, we know elections are coming up, so get some data about your reader or your audience, right? Mm-hmm. How engaged are they? If we imagine you can go up and say 54% of my audience is undecided, you really better communicate to them. Like, have those strong data around policy and politics, right? So that you actually can lead in with, I did a survey of my audience and they're really hungry for good political, information. So that is worth a lot to the advertisers.
And the money has to be spent, right? Because if they don't spend it, they can't get it back, right? They have to spend it, right? The other thing is, build the relationships now, even if it's not a political year, build the relationships with, the Democratic. We worked with the 3AF, we reached out to Nancy Pelosi about PPP, and we built a coalition of 25 different Asian media. TFC was on, India, I think India West or India Post was on, so there was a bunch of people that were on that letter, and it was great because we were able to then send it out to them and say, at least, here we are, this is what we're doing, we exist, and, can you please support us in giving us some funds, right? There's also a lot of bills that go out there that, there is a marketing campaign, or there is something, or there may not be, but we need to be a part of that bill and say, look, you need to put a multicultural or an Asian media part to it, because, they're not going to know about it. Right. And they may just be going to a community fund, which is great. But at the same time, that community fund is going to be, people are not going to know about what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I learned that from the Black Media Caucus in Sacramento. She mentioned that. Right. So those things are really, really helpful.
Yeah. Elected official and policymakers love media. So you're not going to have a shortage of politician who is going to want to take a meeting with you, right? If you are a media company.
Yep.
Yeah. Marco, there's another question here about Nielsen, and it's similar to the other question, but is there a plan to incorporate Cantonese, Mandarin, Vietnamese, Korean into the radio and television surveys to actually sample the markets?
Yeah, we're working on that. It's a, it's a really, really costly endeavor. And again, it becomes a chicken and egg thing. We need to have more people, more clients who want AAPI data, right? And so then we want to provide the API data. So, but we're definitely, it's on the docket.
So to convince media to kind of go towards that route, because I had to do that with a few of my clients, it's a tough battle. Nielsen does have different products that aren't as expensive as some other ones. And again, it's a starting point. It's a good way of getting in the door. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to close somebody, but it's at least you will get that appointment potentially. And at the same time, it does help internally, and you're able to then re-strategize and market to see which shows you think you should market, or how you should market different shows, different programming. Maybe you should make a lineup change because you're seeing that people aren't interested in this show. So it's also internal. But yeah, internally, it's a hard sell to sell it up the chain, because it's like, well, I don't need it, right? Maybe these agencies don't need it, right? But the way I look at it is, you buy insurance, right? You buy insurance because for that time you're going to need it, right? And something's going to happen. You're going to need that insurance. You don't worry about it on the daily, right? It's the same thing with buying Nielsen, right? You don't necessarily say, oh, okay, our market is not going to be bought and sold at this point on rating points, maybe on impressions, but not on rating points. So from that perspective, you can just throw that stuff out the window. But from the insurance side, if you ever get audited, and if it's with, some big, agency or someone that, government or whatever that you work with, they're like, hey, I don't know if the people are watching. I don't know if where's my money going to? You can pull out Nielsen and say, look, here's an estimate. Here's, I calculated the estimate based on these impressions, and this is legit. Right. We may be under, we may be over, but if we're under, I'll give you more X, Y, and Z. So that way we'll get to that point. Right. But it's a way to be able to hold that accountability and justify it at the end, on the back end.
All right. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Marco, I've also gotten a couple questions. Is the 90-second video presentation available on the Nielsen website?
No, it's not, unfortunately. It's an asset that we created, and so we don't distribute it digitally.
Okay.
But all the data that I presented is available through our report. That's on the website. That's downloadable, and more. And there's more on there.
All right. Well, we are at the end of the webinar, and I wanted to accommodate a lot more people's questions, but we are out of time. However, I'll make sure, if you would like a copy of this webinar, I'll make sure to send it out to you. Just shoot me an email to Lockie@chicagoasiannetwork.com. I'd like to just get closing remarks from all of the panelists before we end. Let's start with Tully.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having me today. I think the in-language media is very important, especially in this election year. I think one thing that I've seen as a successful tactic in other cities and other markets are just the different minority media companies coming together, hosting a town hall for a candidate, and really sort of building equity into your brand as it relates to the local politicians and some of the government agencies and resources. So I think that would be sort of my top recommendation. And also just reach out to agencies like ours that specialize in these minority segments. Introduce yourselves. Let's figure out a way to work together.
Thank you very much, Tully. Michael.
For me, thanks for hosting this. It was great. My first panel. So I'm excited. So I think for me, it's really about showing up, and we need to be seen, right? Showing up and being seen. And that's why, again, it's about the organizations. It's about doing the, getting out there. It's also about educating yourselves about, how to sell, and also how to work with agencies, like their stuff, right? So to me, that's kind of the end the end game is we need to be there. We need to show up. And we also, one other thing is we do need to collaborate with each other more across the board, whether you're competing each other in the same market, whatever. We need to collaborate, because if we don't collaborate, we can't get that bigger prize, which is, we in this market, we're about $700 million in terms of advertising. We should be billions of dollars in advertising. I mean, it's just the value that we have, and Nielsen has presented that data, right? So we have a long way to go, but we gotta partner with each other, right? We gotta work together, and you see it with general market, where you have a news organization on TV working with a print organization, or working with this other organization, right? A digital organization, using the mass media for that mass part of it, right? So we gotta work together. And then then we could fight about who gets more piece of the pie based on data, right, or based on what the client wants, right? So that's my 2 cents.
Great.
All right.
Well, I just want to say thank you too to everybody. I feel very lucky to be in the company of these three, be the only girl in this company of 3 guys. And I think I echo everything Telly and Michael say. The thing about data, you want to watch it, right? You want to watch the data. You have to study it, but you really have to be in it. And what I mean by that really is, like, things are changing, right? And you have to innovate, and even showing just that you are trying, that you are not a legacy, you are relevant, you have the direct connection to the community. All of that is part of a story that sells, and that is very, very valuable. So I would go out there and be bold and not be afraid to try new things.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mariko, Michael, and Telly, for spending the time to help us out in the minority media. And I definitely want to echo what all of them said, where it's also definitely about collaborating with one another, especially during these challenging times. If you would like a copy of the recording, feel free to just shoot me an email at locky@chicagoasiannetwork.com, and I'll make sure to get it to you. Thank you very much.
And a final applause for Lackey for getting us together, right? In the spirit of collaboration, you're doing great work for our community. So keep it up, please.
Thank you so much, Mariko. To all our audience members, thank you again for tuning in, and stay tuned, as we're going to have more webinars coming out throughout the rest of the year. Take care.
Thank you.